What's up, guys? Welcome into All Tied Up. It is Chris Marler and Clint Lamb back again for a Friday edition of All Tied Up. And we are talking, I don't know what we're talking about today here, Clint. We got the Oklahoma game coming up. It's been a minute since we've done the show. We've been doing the Sunday recaps, and you've been doing a ton of stuff over there at Cover Crimson. How you been, man?
I'm fantastic. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the game. Obviously going on the road to Norman, Oklahoma. A lot of people really aren't giving Oklahoma a chance. Alabama's a 13.5-point favorite. I just wanted to, first of all, if you got any sort of obscure stats or whatever that you want to throw out there, player props. I don't know how much you've been looking into that this week. If you don't, that's totally fine. Just want to kind of, it's Norman, it's Oklahoma, then you got Auburn, then you potentially get the SEC championship, and you get the playoff discussion happening all throughout this while all this stuff is going on. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think hold on a second. Okay, good. Here's the thing for me. This, I feel very nervous, and it's something that our buddy Mick Gillespie said on Sunday that has completely turned my confidence upside down. And it's a really good point that Mick made, and it's the worst possible thing that could happen for Bama, and we'll see if it comes true. But Bama, if you look at the way the season has kind of had parallels throughout it, the year where it's you go before the Georgia game is in the schedule before the end of September, and you're fired up. That's a big game. You get to the game before Georgia, it's Wisconsin. You blow them out. You get to the bye week. You obviously put together an incredible game plan for Georgia. You beat the brakes off with the first half. You hold on to win the game. We're all flying high. We're talking about we're a 93% chance to make the playoff at that point. You were in the driver's seat, and then you go into the next week and you lose to a team you hadn't lost to in 40 years. So when Mick said, how well will this team handle success? That's a big concern, I think, for me, because you want to think they've turned the corner. The Tennessee game was awful. It wasn't that long ago. But they come out against Mizzou. They shut them out. Showed a lot of pride. We talked about it over and over. They get to the bye week. So it's just like Wisconsin in the bye week. And then they beat the brakes off LSU. So everything's in front of this team. Everything's in front of this team still. And I feel like they look refocused. I just worry because it's a road game in Norman. It's the latest they've played it's the first time they've played a Power 4 opponent the week before Auburn since 2006. There's just a lot of new things happening here.
Yeah, and man, it is. I can't remember. So I saw a graphic where someone said the last time that Oklahoma was a double-digit home favorite or a home dog, it has been years and years. So, say what?
1997.
Is it okay? But yeah, I wanted to say it was sometime in the 90s, but I was like, man, I don't want to say that, and then it'd be it's 2018. So okay, I'm glad you had that stat, but that's another thing, and it's senior day for Oklahoma. I think that adds a little bit of a wrinkle here. But what I will say is I think Alabama, having gone through what they did as far as, the success against Georgia, kind of almost blowing it, the Vanderbilt situation, then he followed up with, squeaking by South Carolina, just that kind of stretch. I think hopefully, they can look and say, hey, we already didn't handle success very well at one point this year, and we almost blew it. So we can't let what's happening right now get to us. It means nothing. We've got to finish. And then also, what I like about the Mercer game, there's only so much that you can take away from it, but they didn't come out playing slow, right? A lot of teams against that type of opponent, they come out, they're playing poor football, but they're just so much more talented than the other team that they still end up blowing them out. But you point to some things, you're turning the football over unnecessarily. You're going 3 and out when you shouldn't. It's different things that you're doing. It felt like Alabama came out playing a pretty clean game. They seem pretty focused. So that also kind of gives me some hope. But you're right. I think this week in particular, we have this conversation. They blow out Missouri. And then it's okay, now you've got a bye week. How are you going to do against LSU? You've had a lot of success. You shut an SEC opponent out. It was a top 25 opponent. What are you going to do against LSU? And then they railroad LSU. And then everybody's okay, but now you got Mercer. You're definitely going to beat them. That's not really in question. But how are you going to look? Are you going to look sharp? Are you going to look undisciplined? They come out, they answer that question, but this is like the last one where it's like, okay, this is like your first real threat since the LSU game where now everybody is singing your praises big time. How are you going to handle that success? So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
All right. So, some slight technical difficulties over here because the internet has not made its way to Columbia, South Carolina, where I live, but maybe someday. Maybe someday.
Hey, 2045 is looking real good for you guys.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait. Yeah.
When they expand to the 47-team playoff, that's when it'll finally hit for you guys.
Yeah, Indiana's going to be a wagon by then, so that'll be great. I tell you what. So I guess getting back into it, and I'm not sure exactly where you cut off, but just getting back into it, we'll just keep this one casual and talk about just some of the stuff because I did do a deep dive. I did look into some of like the different numbers and stuff, and I'll tell you what. One of the things I go to every week, Shane. This is not a plug for me. This is just free advertising. Sorry guys, but you ever go to Action Network? Like most of the info I get is usually from Action Network and covers.com because they have like all this. I just think that the betting angles from different things, like it's not saying that's going to be the outcome of the game, but it's just very, very interesting to me. That's why I think a lot of like the first quarter, first half strengths that this Alabama team has, like getting out ahead early, are always really important in keeping up the stats. But that's where I found the stat about Oklahoma being a double-digit underdog. It's the second time that like they have been. I think this is the largest underdog they've been at home since '97. It's the largest. It's the second largest they've been in general since like '99. The other one was Ole Miss earlier this year, and they're also 0-3 in those games. So that's good news for Bama. Here's the thing I keep coming back to, and I'm going to pull this up just to make sure I have the exact numbers in front of me. I've kept up with Oklahoma a couple times throughout this year just because they've already played South Carolina and I cover for Locked On. And just looking at some of the numbers, we all thought that Jackson Arnold was going to be like just much better at least, right? Like I just kept assuming like if you're going to let Dylan Gabriel walk out the door, you got to feel like you're pretty confident what you have.
Yeah.
That has not been the case. The sun's out. This is great. This is just great podcasting. I'm in heaven. So,
they're about to take you for the rapture.
Yeah, right. Like look at this. I was looking at the numbers a while ago because they fired their offensive coordinator, and when they fired the offensive coordinator at the time, they were ranked like 114th or worse in every major statistical category, like scoring offense, pass yards per game, rush yards per game, and then also total yards per game. They've made some improvements, right? But you look at just like here's what I keep coming back to from a confidence standpoint. Oklahoma does not have the offense to stay on the field with Alabama. They just don't. Like they should not score and keep up with Bama. Like they do not have the ability to put up a lot of points. Their offense has not scored more than 20 points in a game this season. Like they have scored 20 points twice against Mizzou and Auburn, but it's because they had defensive touchdowns. The offense is averaging 15.3 points per game in SEC games. They still rank, when you look at their offense right now, I'm looking at the numbers, they rank 117th in total yards, 127 in yards per play, 110 in passing yards, 125 in yards per attempt. And then you look at the scoring, it's 94th. Clint, I'm telling you, those numbers are dramatically improved from what they were even a month ago. Like they were even worse. And it's still really bad, but they do not have the offense to stay with Alabama. That's the first point. And the other point is this I keep coming back to. Man, they've had 18 turnovers this season. It's the second most of any team in the SEC. And when you look at what this Bama defense has been able to do this year, they rank second in the country in turnovers forced at 24. So, like, if those things, I know it's on paper, but that's how the games have played out a lot of the times throughout this season for both teams, that they should win.
Yeah, I mean, they absolutely should win. Like, when you look at how they match up, one of the things or one of the problems with, like, Oklahoma's defense is, like, the vertical ball. And I will say Alabama's vertical passing game really hadn't been there in recent weeks, or it certainly has not been there consistently. And I would even say you could almost say in some ways non-existent if you take out Robbie Oots, right? And that, I mean, I don't even, that's kind of that wasn't really Oots winning downfield necessarily as much as it was, the defense kind of letting it happen, right? Where through coverage bust or really not playing that very well. So when you look at the way that Alabama has won offensively in recent weeks, and you take what Oklahoma does well as far as their ability to stop the run, you're going to have, home field advantage. Crowd probably is going to play a pretty major factor in this one. I don't know how much success like Alabama's run game is going to have. But what I will say is that I feel like based off of how they've won, how defenses and Auburn might get kind of a leg up because they're going to watch Oklahoma be the one that this happens to, because it's already a weakness of theirs. But I could see them committing. It's all going to be dependent upon how much Oklahoma commits to the run game. Like, they've been pretty good as far as stopping the run despite committing limited resources to it. If they're able to do that, that's not great for Alabama, or at least not for the Alabama offense versus Oklahoma defense matchup. But if Alabama, through sheer volume, the last few weeks, and the fact that it's been so successful, you're starting to see Jalen Milroe get going a little bit again. If they commit a little bit more to making sure they stop the run, try to force more on a Jalen Milroe's arm, that on top of the fact that they have not been great as far as covering downfield, I could see the explosives returning in this game. And I think that will be kind of important when you're watching or thinking about Auburn's watching this, and if they see them have a lot of success, the explosive plays downfield return, they're going to have to commit some stuff to trying to slow that down. But also you got to worry about Alabama's run game with a couple of running backs. You're getting Ryan Williams involved on some jets. Kendrick Law at some point, I think he's going to end up having a couple of big plays in one of these games. I think that can open up a lot as far as the short intermediate stuff, whether it be against Auburn or in the future. But I wouldn't be shocked at all if they had some success downfield against Oklahoma's defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what they're going to have it too, because they have been good against the run. Like, they've been good against the run. And I'd say the other thing that concerns me is they do get after the quarterback pretty well. Like, they get after the quarterback pretty well. I know against South Carolina they had 6 sacks in that game. Their rank's pretty high, I feel like, in terms of let me double check here. They're 10th in the country in sacks this season, so it'll be a good test for the offensive line. The other thing, just from me being the constant neurotic worrier about everything, is it's a night game in Norman. It's they're coming off a bye week. This could be, I'm not saying it will be. I don't know enough about the ins and outs of Oklahoma's program, what goes on in those 4 walls with that team. But you have to think there's got to be some point of pride at some point. This could be their attempt at a circle the wagons game, and this has been by all means a failure of a first season in the SEC. But beating Alabama would be a huge feather in the cap, and it also create even more job security than I guess Brent Venables currently has, that we did not see that coming. But yeah, I think there's things that if the season sets up the parallels I was talking about earlier, I just would love to get through these next 2 games, because if you get through these next 2 games, brother, we are at least in the playoff, and then everything starts over.
Here's what I worry about in this game. I think Oklahoma's defense is going to have enough success against Alabama's offense. I just think that, the combination of their talent, how they play, it matches up pretty well against Alabama's style of offense. You're going to have the home crowd, as I've already mentioned. But, and that's part of it. I still think Alabama is going to get theirs. But what I worry about is, to what extent? I could see Alabama being in the mid-20s, the high 20s, and then it's okay, can Oklahoma get that? I think it would probably need to be getting some favorable field position, whether it be through some kind of return, whether it be, forcing a turnover, maybe 2 turnovers, putting your offense in a favorable situation or whatever. But I wouldn't be shocked. To me, this will go one of 2 ways. This will either be Alabama completely shuts Oklahoma down and they completely blow them out, or Oklahoma, from an offensive perspective, throws the kitchen sink at Alabama. You're playing in kind of we don't have anything to lose, and you're just seeing all kinds of stuff being thrown at them, maybe that they weren't expecting, taking a lot of chances, taking a lot of risk, and that leads to a touchdown or 2 touchdowns, and then maybe a favorable return puts you in a situation where you get another, so what I'm saying is that's where I can see Oklahoma making this a really tough game. Alabama has to kind of be prepared for that. you don't want to give up the easy stuff, assuming that they're going to do that. But I will say, from their perspective, it's a big program. It's a prideful program. But right now, they're trying to position themselves to get to a bowl game, and they're 5-5. And you're right; it's been kind of a disappointment up to this point. But you can capture a lot of momentum if you can pull this upset. Really, Oklahoma's backs are against the wall. Alabama's to an extent is too. It's like if you lose, you're out of the playoff hunt.
Right.
You have something to lose. But Oklahoma, it's like it's you're fighting for your life, right? Venables is fighting for his life. So yeah, I think that creates an interesting dynamic to this game. But at the same time, from an X's and O's standpoint, Alabama's defense should be the key factor in all of this. I would be shocked if they couldn't force a couple of turnovers. I would be shocked if they didn't put the offense in some favorable situations of their own. It feels like this defense is playing really good football right now. And I think the way that it plays, Alabama's been really good at pressuring quarterbacks. They haven't been great at sacks necessarily.
Yeah.
But, Oklahoma's offensive line has just not been very good. So if you can pressure these quarterbacks, then, I think that really gives you a chance to force some of those turnovers. And then I think, at that point, if you can just do what you need to do offensively, take what's there, put together a couple of scoring drives, you can win this football game and win it pretty sizably. You don't know exactly how it's going to play out.
Yeah, I think the route the path to yeah, that's a better way. Is the path to Oklahoma beating Bama, I think, is much more in line with like the fiasco, chaos, doomsday scenario, which is like, I don't think it's them hitting a bunch of big plays. Like, it might be them hitting some ridiculous play that bounce, like the Ole Miss thing in 2015 where ball goes over Patterson's head, or not Patterson, Kelly's head, and then bounces off somebody else, and like whatever. Like, something like that, because they haven't scored more than 2 touchdowns offensively in any SEC game this year. Like, they have been very, very bad. Very, very bad. And I think that they haven't gained at 300 yards of offense, I think, but once against an SEC opponent this year. And that was, I believe, Ole Miss, when they, they were come from behind like a little bit in that game. I think that the path for them is turnovers deep in Bama's territory and forcing and also, like, it's the same thing Vanderbilt did, which is like run the clock, keep Bama's offense off the field, because Bama can't score if they're not on the field. And I wouldn't be surprised if I see something like that, because here's the other thing too, man. Like, in years past, we would be like, well, Oklahoma's got some dudes, but that they've been so beat up all year. They've been missing so many key guys offensively. I think the path to them winning would have to be on defense, them forcing turnovers. We got to keep it a short one today here, Clint, because the internet's going to cut out, and I've got some stuff to do. But I want to get 2 thoughts on this from you real quick. Better chance of an upset this week or next week?
Oh, I would almost literally put them equal. I would probably say this week, though, with it being in Bryant-Denny Stadium.
On the road.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a real tough question, man. What do you think?
I want to say it's this week, but here's the thing, man. Because Auburn just hasn't come close to Bama in Bryant-Denny for a long time. That Auburn team is so beautifully flawed and bad. It's hilarious to watch. Like it couldn't be more Auburn, which is like, man, we just gave it our best. It's like, yeah, you did, but you didn't score any points. Yeah, whatever. But I mean, they're ranked in the top 14 in the country. Auburn is, in yards per play and yards per attempt. Like, between the 20s, they are really, really good. Peyton Thorne's only thrown 1 interception in his last 6 games, or 5 games, something like that. But they're also ranked 72nd in scoring offense. Like I don't know how you rank in the top 15 in moving the ball that well, and then just don't get into the end zone. But that has been a thing for them all season. It's with the way that the Auburn games played out the past couple of years, I would say Auburn, just because that's what they're so annoying, because it's just we've stepped on you so many times. Just die. Just please die. Like roll over. Please stop taking us to the fourth quarter and overtime. It's just like I just want to breathe easily. I just had a whole mess of stuffing and Thanksgiving food 2 days ago. Like I got heart palpitations now, guys. Just like let me have a day.
Are you nervous at all about Farouk being, because I mean, Oklahoma's been without their top 5 receivers for a while. And I mean, Nick Anderson's still out, Jaden Gibson, Anthony Deion Burks was a guy who they thought might be back. He's the transfer from, I think, Purdue. They thought he would be able to return. Now he's listed as doubtful. No, actually, he's listed as out. I think they changed it. He's now officially listed as out as well. So really the only one back is Farouk. And last week he only had 2 catches for 11 yards. Part of me thinks that, that was just them getting his feet wet, a little bit, letting him catch his groove. I think him having an extra week, that's at least one of your top receivers. I think he finished like 2nd on Oklahoma's team last year in catches, like 3rd in receiving yards, I believe. That helps their offense because they've been without all of their receivers, top 5 receivers for a while. Does that worry you at all? I mean, because it's just one guy.
It's just one guy. Like I just outside of Tennessee 2022, you just don't see that often. The only one I can ever think of, and I'm sure there's something in between. The only one I can remember is that Craig Reed game or Josh Reed from LSU in like 2001 or 2002. You remember that?
Yeah. Yes. Unfortunately,
he had like 18 catches for 273 or something. It was like it was ridiculous. I think that it could improve their offense, and like you keep waiting for the light to come on with Jackson Arnold, but at the same time, like you kind of don't. Like I'm sure that the recruiting evals couldn't have been that far off, but like when I see a guy like Nico, like that's a guy I'm like, yeah, okay, I see the physical talents and the arm talent. Like I'm waiting for the light to come on for that guy.
Yeah,
I don't see that as much with Jackson Arnold, and here's the thing too, man. They just don't have as much as like. I think the biggest thing from Oklahoma to coming into the SEC, and it's so cliche, is man, in the trenches, they're just not built for what this is. And like 2 years ago, when Spencer Rattler transferred to South Carolina, I remember saying that the biggest struggle he was going to have was the Carolina offensive line because they had one total 4 or 5 star on that roster at South Carolina. Oklahoma had 11. Oklahoma's recruited well enough to be in the SEC and recruited a roster that's supposed to be built for the SEC, whether it's injuries, whether it's because they lost Caden Green to Mizzou or whatever. They had to replace all 5 guys in the offensive line, and they allowed more sacks in their first 4 games in the SEC than they did all year last year in the Big 12. Like they just and Bama's not a team that necessarily gets to the quarterback and like takes him to the ground. But as you saw in the LSU game, sometimes it's not as important because if you can harass and get back there all game long, he's going to be in trouble.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And I mean, I think Alabama against LSU did a pretty good job as far as their coverage downfield. And that also led to, there just wasn't many places for Nussmeier to go with the football. So, yeah, I think that plays a part. Chris, I appreciate you hopping on here with me and battling through the bad internet. It happens, but we appreciate you. We appreciate everybody who has listened in. If you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Cover Crimson, and then get on over to covercrimson.com, sign up, join the message board. A lot of conversations happening over there. Stuff's getting interesting as far as the playoff discussion, and just with what Alabama's got left. A couple of interesting opponents, potentially the SEC championship. What happens if they win? What happens if they lose? All that conversation's happening over at covercrimson.com. And then also my bookie, go, Chris, are you recommending people go lay the 13.5 points with Alabama?
So what I would take in this game, I like, what do I like in this game? I like Jackson Arnold over a half an interception. He hasn't thrown many, but they still throw the ball over a lot. I like him over a half an interception. Honestly, man, the 13.5. I just don't see them having the like. Here's what I always go back to: if the line's 13.5, do you think Bama can score 14 points?
Yes,
because I don't think Oklahoma. There's a chance Oklahoma might not score. So I think that's what I would do. So I would cover the 13.5.
All right, well, get on over to mybookie.com. Take Chris's advice. Make yourself a little bit of money. Use the promo code next round. Chris, appreciate you, brother. And if you're wrong on that, because I'm gonna go do the same. I'm gonna listen to you. So you're gonna have even worse internet next week if you lose me money, Chief.
Perfect.
All right. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, Chris. And we will talk to you guys soon.